So I kind of decided it would be very unfair of me to cover just one half of a major 2-pack release without covering the other half as well. So now that we've already talked about Reborn Optimus Primal, let's talk about Beast Wars Reborn Megatron. My version is the Japanese release for the 10th anniversary of Beast Wars, but this is pretty much identical to the American release that was a Toys R Us exclusive during the 10th anniversary line. So, either or, it's the same toy. Let's take a closer look. As you can see, it is the original Ultra Class mold. Massive purple T-Rex with a lot of paint, giving him a lot of interesting colors here. Purple and green working on something that is not a Constructicon. Kind of amazing. The head itself, extremely well detailed. You can really see how much molding went into this to create a heavily scaled and muscular look. Really, really imposing. Now, yeah, of course, this is based on the 90s interpretation of the T-Rex, so he does have a horizontal base, but we have yet to have any kind of feathering attached to him, and when you find out they may or may not have had feathering, there's evidence one way and the other, so let's not get into that debate right now. For now, it's accurate to how he looked, for the most part, in the show. They even added his tiny, beady little eyes to the mold. I love that they did that. It's absolutely ridiculous. All the teeth individually painted. Little tiny claws down here, also painted. And then we get to the airbrushing across the back. Look at all of this green going across. It's a really cool, interesting effect. Pretty solid from the top down, but once you get to see it from the side and just see how these just very small amounts just touching in the details really, really makes a lot of this pop and gives it this really unique look all the way through the sculpting. It's an extremely, extremely interesting paint job. And there's also airbrushing across the belly, this dark brown, which goes all the way to the tip of the tail. You'll notice a lot of this toy is completely shelled in, while you can see here toward the rear there are some robot mode parts exposed and whatnot. They tried to cover just about every angle they could, which, given the elevated stance of his beast mode, I think that's a really good decision. There's a little bit of gappage and kind of seams between the lines. I mean, you can see, this piece is never quite fit flush into that gap, and there is this big hinge hanging off the back of his tail, but other than that, he does do a pretty decent job of disguising himself as a Tyrannosaurus, for as much as a Tyrannosaurus is going to be able to hide, I guess. Now, as you can see, for a Beast Wars toy, while he is fairly detailed and fairly solid in beast mode, that does come at a loss of articulation here. At the legs, you can bend the knees, and you can rotate them as well, and you also adjust the feet and this. You can't really dust the back claw itself because it brings out the robot mode heel, but I guess if you want to use it, it breaks the look a little bit, but it doesn't do too much. So you really don't have that much you can do. I think the only thing you'd really want out of this is to be able to get it more of a vertical stance like an 80s T-Rex, but can't really do it that well because there's nothing as far as articulation goes in the head. You do get ball joints here on the arms. They're really only good for swiveling because there's no real cut to get them in and out, but at least it's something. You also have just a little bit of function in this mode. Again, the Ultra Class Beast Wars toys for the first release, gimmick loaded to keep the kids interested. For Megatron, you see these little tabs here that we can yank and basically pull out his esophagus, which causes his mouth to open and close and give you kind of a chomping action. There's a couple things I like about this. You do have this purple part on the inside, which you can mistake as a membrane, but it's actually just part of the hinging gimmick. And of course, that big red tongue. As you can see, the whole thing is removable, and this allows you to fill the entire thing with water. There is the plug. Now, this itself, I've never actually used as a water toy. Well, mostly because this was an expensive Japanese import, and I'm really not going to soak the thing in water just to kind of spray out. But that was it. It was a water squirt gimmick, and you can see the nozzle there on the top of the tongue where it would spray. So hey, that's the 90s style of toy gimmick. Make a toy squirt water. You know, it's cheaper than making a missile sometimes. But we got some of that too, and we'll get to that a little bit later. First off, I think it's time to transform him. And this is where it's going to get a little bit car crash, people, because I was never good at transforming this toy. Never really was. All right, so hang on. I'm gonna go ahead and do the backside of the tail first, just because it just gets a little bit out of the way. Extend that outward. I'm gonna have to crack open the back. This is the big piece of shell on this entire toy, and it latches in. Oh, ow, man, my fingers. It latches in really securely. You can see those raised spines on the back that do allow you to get some leverage and get them opened up, but it's a little bit rough. I'm going to rotate these parts down. Just need them a little bit out of the way in order to get all of this unfolded. So now he looks completely skinned and gutted. From here I can straighten out the legs and get these rotated down to be completely out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and rotate the lower legs and get those heels out just to finish up with the leg transformation. From here, let's see what comes next. Well, we can fold the arms back, get the shell out of the way, a lot of shell out of the way. Fold that as far as it's going to go. That leaves us with the torso itself. I'm going to go ahead and flip the head up, pull out, rotate, hinge up this direction. You're going to see some extra little panels that you can fold it in to close up the gap. All this connects in. Come on. There's 3 little tab points where everything kind of has to connect in, and there we go. I think that's about as close as... There we go. That's about as good as that's going to get. And with that done, pretty much all now we need to do is get the arms in the position we want. Go ahead and get that like so. And that, my friends, is what I'm going to call Beast Wars Reborn Megatron in his full, realized robot mode. Now, if you've had experience with the original Beast Wars Megatron Ultra, you kind of notice this one is extensively changed. Now, the primal version did remold the chest and the beast mode face and the head and all that in order to make it more show accurate. Megatron did not need nearly as much help in the molding department, but the torso has been littered with extra paint apps in order to make it close to the show's appearance. And that helps in tremendous ways. Let's first look at that brand new robot mode head. Look at that. This is an exceptional job remolding it into a show-accurate vestige, painted up in heavy amounts in order to get it as close as possible. And once again, you can see that bit of the shine to the eyes, just to give it a little bit more of a life to it. Little tiny Predacon emblem there at the top, and just the slightest hint of a smirk. He is thinking about something right now, because this Megatron is always thinking. Looking closer at the torso and the chest, you can see a lot of silver, a lot of, I believe the main color here, I can't see, this is where that paint job is done so much, it's kind of hard to tell, because the original torso was completely black, and now we have lavender all the way around. I can quickly double check. You can see just how much lavender is on this, just to make sure that that show accuracy shines through. Tons and tons of paint on that torso in order to get that to look as close and as good as it can. Down into the midsection, we do have a lot more paint as well. Some of the pelvis section. But you also see a lot of green and a little bit of purple, just to make sure his thighs are a little bit more mechanical looking and a little bit more detailed. It also brings that green from the beast mode skin into the robot mode a little bit, which is also a nice little bit of color balance. You can still see tons of robot mode or beast mode parts. Of course you can, because it's a Beast Wars character, and Megatron just kind of wore his animal parts proudly as weapons. So you still have the tail, you still have the beast mode head, and he has no hands with which to hug his children. Not that he has children, he seems the kind of parent who would eat their child instinctively, but, you know, that's just how this Megatron kind of rolls. As you can see, he does have a lot of kibble. Unlike Primal, who has the advantage of going from humanoid to humanoid, this not so much. The sacrifice to having so much shell encompassing his beast mode is Megatron has a lot of kibble hanging off of his back in the form of about half of his robot or a beast mode skin. I keep making that mistake. As well as just these big, huge hip parts hanging off as well. Necessary, unfortunately. First year Beast Wars toys were not the best at using the bulk of the beast to make the robot, but, you know, they did their best here. And that's kind of why you see arms and legs being used as hands, too. So, kind of comes with the territory of being a brand new toy line. So, let me go ahead and show you off the articulation here. We've kind of had a tour of the toy's physical details. Ball-jointed head. Gets a little bit restricted while it bends and rotates, but anything beyond this is kind of an extreme pose. You can work it around and get it to the side if you really want, so not terribly hindered. Shoulders themselves, you can hear that nice little ratcheted ball joint going up and down. It's more of a universal joint in the shoulder, along with a bicep rotation, giving you plenty of range in this arm. You do have a bit of an elbow bend as well. You kind of have to bicep curl the T-Rex head in order to do it. The gimmick still works here, so you can open and close what is now his hand / big fusion cannon thing. Meanwhile, on the other arm, you do still have that same universal level of articulation as well as the rotation here. The elbow has way more room. But you kind of lack anything beyond there because everything beyond there is gimmick, and we're going to get to that here in a bit. We do have a waist rotation. Do have a little bit of hindrance because of these big hip pieces colliding into the back. I think that's the one difference from the American version to the Takara version. If I remember right, there were a few reports of a piece being missing out of the waist here, and it not really having the friction it was supposed to have. So that might have been some isolated incidents, but I remember reports of that going around. So I think that's the one difference. Everything physical and everything engineering-wise otherwise is pretty much identical. See, how are we doing on the thighs? Ooh, listen to that ratcheting. Listen to it. Oh, you don't hear solid parts like that anymore. Well, kind of in the Commander War, but besides that. So yeah, full universal, full ratcheting. Again, restriction because of this. We can rotate it out of the way here at least. That way we get a full rotation above the knee. The knee goes about 90 degrees, and we still have that same level of flex to the feet and the heel, just in case you need adjusting for balance. So not bad, not bad. After all, you kind of expect that of Beast Wars because the whole point of Beast Wars was, let's actually give them more than just shoulder articulation from now on. Let's actually make them, I don't know, action figures, you know, with action. So we move on to actual action features. Now that we have noticed that smooth transition I put in there. It's, yeah, very smooth. So we already saw one gimmick, which was the biting mouth and squirting water, which we didn't squirt any water. Because you think I hate losing missiles? I really hate a lot of my sensitive recording equipment, lights, and computer, etc., being exposed to spraying liquid. Now, we do have this big arm to talk about, where if we move some of these panels out of the way, we can activate this main gimmick, which involves pushing and pulling out of this lever. It's a weird motion, but right. Ah, come on. See, before the review, I was trying to figure out what the best way of actually showing off this gimmick was, and there really isn't an easy way of operating this thing. You kind of have to hold on to the arm and then hold on to the lever, and it takes quite a bit of force to get this thing moving. But as you can see, it snaps the claw forward. It's a neat little action feature. I'm not necessarily sure if it was worth having this big hunk of an arm. I might have just preferred it removable like it was in the show. Like every other Beast Wars Megatron eventually figured out, hey, just make the tail arm removable. Much, much easier. Beyond that, pretty simple stuff. They do take advantage of these big hip pieces in order to incorporate a very special style of missile launcher, which, unlike Primal, who just has straight up blue missiles and it's kind of boring, these are actually kind of interesting. They actually took advantage of that shape to create these unique anchor-shaped missiles. And these, they're pretty standard stuff. Just like any other standard missile. Insert button is on the side. And the reason these got left out is because they are on a hair trigger. These would have definitely fired off at some point during mid-transformation when I wasn't paying attention, and I hate when missiles do that. So that's why they got left off for now. But they are a nice, unique shape, and hey, at least they took advantage of some of that hanging kibble. So I think that just about does it for this toy. That was Beast Wars Reborn Ultra Class Megatron. The remolding and the new paint job are exceptional. And even though we only have a Masterpiece Optimus Primal on the way, who does look really awesome, still no word about a Megatron. So if you want a big, bad, show-accurate Megatron, this is still your best bet. Though there are a couple others, TJOmega and I believe one other that came out that went as show-accurate as it could with this mold. So you've had a few chances to get something that looks like this. I would say it's probably not as good of an action figure as Primal is, just because you got things like big beast mode parts hanging off and a lot of shell kibble and such, and not quite as much range of motion and articulation. But I would say he makes a better Transformer, just because the change from one mode to another seems a little bit more extreme and there's a lot more going on. It's a more interesting transformation, and the beast mode's a little bit more solid looking. So I would say they're equally good figures, but they have their flaws and their advantages in different ways, which I think makes them an excellent 2-pack if you can still find them. Good luck on that one.